Let me give you a very personal example. I understand my faith, Islam, the way I grew up to understand it, as being like a river. And the colour of my river depends on the bed over which it flows. So British Islam looks very different to Chinese Islam, looks very different to North African Islam, looks very different to Pakistani Islam, because the bed over which that river is flowing is very different. Now, if Britain suddenly becomes this nation where everybody's identity has to be dumbed down, and we don't talk about a Christian heritage, and we don't talk about values and worths, and we don't, celebrate Christmas, and we call it Winterville because we all feel included, then actually my bed is pretty grey. So my Islam is going to be pretty grey and awful looking because it hasn't got a strong bed. And so for my Islam to be beautiful, my faith to be very much reflective of the nation and the values that I'm rooted in, I have to have a strong bed, and I have to have, and that's what I meant by, Europe needs to be sure about its own Christian heritage. It has to reflect that. I gave the example of my own daughter to say, she was much clearer in making those kind of overlaps from a very, very young age because she was having the different kind of experiences. In terms of kind of, I don't know if I coined the phrase, but I certainly use the phrase a lot, called secular fundamentalism. Some people find that slightly insulting because they think that, fundamentalism should really be a term that should be the preserve of the religious communities. But I actually hear very often people who are secular who say there should be no religious voice around the decision-making table. But I never hear religious people saying there should be no secular voice around the decision-making table. So who's been more fundamentalist? And to kind of look, whether we like it or not, occasionally I get Twitter people and they say, she's the Minister for Fairies and Goblins and Imaginary Friends, because that's how they define the Minister for Faith.
Fairies and goblins
and Imaginary Friends. And it's much more exciting. It's like kind of, being here, it's like, kind of the audition for Harry Potter. But it's what I kind of find though is that the concept that a religion, whether you believe it or not, religions have been an informer of the debate and a basis of solutions for human challenges for hundreds of years, can't suddenly just be locked away as, fairies, goblins and imaginary friends. 80% of the world has some belief in a religion or a belief system. That, you can't just say they shouldn't be an informer of the debate. No, they don't, they shouldn't have a unique position. They shouldn't have a veto voice. And I think that's where us in the US are slightly different, because I think sometimes religious communities in the US feel that they should have almost like a veto voice on the final decision. But I do think they should be an informer of the debate. And that's what I kind of, that's what I said, that kind of that aggressive form of secularism isn't really healthy.